a couple of moments. But here is Tommy Walsh. He was on the show with Joe last night talking about the importance of the club player, not forgetting them during the peak of the elite season.
One thing I would say, Joe, is we were all looking at Dahi there. He was great on the game the other night, that great documentary, and how wonderful it was looking back at that. There was a guy on that from our own club, Dick of the Church, and he was 100 last March. So 100 years doesn't be long gone. Like, we have a guy there that has lived through it. We need to be very, very careful. That game we had the 2 games we had last weekend were wonderful. But if we stay going, Joe, with the club structures that we have at the moment, right around the country, and you can bring up the stats, and I'm not blaming anyone, I blame myself, I'm a club man, I blame everyone, county boards, the GAA themselves, we're all the one on this. But we need to sort out the clubs, because the last year anyway has been terrible, like, as regards, you don't know when you're playing, you don't know what's going on. I know there was new structure, so that's fair enough. We now know what's happening, but I would be a little bit worried, Joe, in that we're talking about giving lads breaks and maybe extending back out the All-Irelands to September. No problem. But let's remember, the GAA communities, the communities now in our parishes, Joe, are revolving around the GAA. That's what makes Ireland what it is. Like, you know, one time it was mass, or you go to the creameries and you go to, you know, maybe down at the local shop. But now with television and all this, it's really only with, say, sport. And in Ireland, it's the GAA. So I would say there's a word of warning out there that if we want what we had last weekend, which was brilliant, and we're all raving about it, in 100 years' time, well then, let's look after the clubs.
Yeah, it's a good point there from Tommy. He's always keen to bring up the clubs at this point of the year, because we have these conversations. It's like this conversation is for January, and the rest of the year is for talking about football, and then the conversation comes back up in November for a silly season. So it's important to be having these conversations now, that if you want to protect the very greatest parts of the game, like we saw last weekend in the hurling, you've got to protect the grassroots.
Yeah, and I think it's the big thing about it is, and Tommy hits the nail on the head, and it's funny when you start to see Kilkenny people speaking about it, and Kilkenny club people, because obviously, you know, there's only really one code in Kilkenny, you know, no disrespect to any Kilkenny footballers out there, but, you know, so even when they're starting to feel the squeeze, you know, it starts to, so you can imagine then when you go to the big dual counties, what's happening. And again, we're not going to go over this because there's reams and reams and reams, and it's just starting to come in now, you know, like, I mean, there's 3 junior games in Meath in 8 days, 3 junior championship matches in 8 days, and there hasn't been one before that for nearly 12 weeks. This kind of crack, right? So, absolutely, it's vital, massively vital, and it needs to be looked at now, because, you know, I saw someone tweeting last week about the hurling and saying, oh, isn't it great that, you know, there's about 6 to 8 counties now who could compete for the All-Ireland final. And I was saying, wow, you know, and the individual was saying, you know, in his day when he was a kid, there was only kind of 3 to 4. So I was saying, okay, so over a 30-year span, you've managed to get it from 4 to 8. So does that mean that in the next 30 years, we manage to get it from 8 to 12? Like, I mean, it's too slow. You like, I mean, all of the, and you even look at the Super 8s and you look at the way the hurling has changed, like, some of those lesser teams and the thing, it just needs to, everything needs to be built back up. And my feeling is that you can, the only way that the competitions and competition above everyone is obviously with the funding and everything else, but it all starts at the club level. And if the club level is given room to breed, and room to expand, and room to, as Tommy says, that when new people come into the community, they see the GAA as a viable option, that it's not like a thing of, you know, it's great when you play it underage, but then when it comes to 17, 18, you're like, when am I playing? What am I doing? And then you just fall out of love with it. Like, we all know this, the drop-off rates are exceptional. You know, like, I mean, it's an alarming statistic. And the funny thing is, it's just still head in the sand stuff. Like, I mean, it's still, like, the CPA have asked weeks ago, months ago. Like, I mean, we've been banging our heads on this, you know, and we met with Tom Ryan, we met with Horan, and we've said, listen, we want actually our stuff being put in. We've actually demanded now that we actually have our stuff being read out at a management meeting to try to see, can this thing be moved on, which is a blank canvas, that, you know, people are brought in, not only hopefully CPA, you know, executive members, but obviously people from the outside of GAA, people from within the GAA, but get people in to a room and just try to get started. Because there's no point working on this, as you say, in October, November. Like, I mean, let's start working on it now. The issues are there. Everyone knows the issues. You know, it's not like it's all of a sudden we're just like, oh, right, oh, there's problems with, you know, the reliability of fixtures in the club world. That's there for donkey's years.
Do you think that there is actually parents kind of not bringing their kids to GAA training as under 8s or whatever it may be because they feel that down the line there's not going to be an opportunity for them? Because it does seem that at least at under 8, like when you were a child, when you were in primary school, it is still the most popular sport by a long shot. That still the other sports are almost way ahead of the GAA in terms of elitism, that the kind of initial instigation of your GAA life is still going to happen, that's not deterring people. Like, you're right, people are dropping out, the dropout rates are alarming, but I don't think it's got to the point yet where it's actually affecting the very bottom. It might do, eventually.
I think it will, because I think there has always been, the GAA is also, so in school, it would always be, you're either playing football or hurling or whatever it is, right? So there is that. But I think the availability of the other sports, and even the availability of people to, say, coach the other sports, has been less and less, and I think that has become more and more now. So you go to places now and there might be a basketball coach, and it's not necessarily just in the strongholds of certain counties, but certain sports are going to get more popularity as the parents who have either dropped out or who have played those sports will want their children to do it. So I know plenty of fellas who would say, I'd rather let my son play soccer or rugby than go back into GAA. They're not suffering what I suffer type thing. You know, and there's a lot of people have said that to me. They're not going to go through what I did, giving up my time for this and this and this and this and this. And this is not necessarily fellas who played inter-county, but a lot of guys who played club stuff and just got absolutely fed up with it. And fed up with the fact that they went from 18 to 33 or 34 and nothing changed. Like, really, it is madness when you think of that, for that long. Tinkering here around the edge and stuff, but no real massive change.
From your sense of sitting down with them, like, how highly do Tom Ryan and John Horan value the club game? How high on their priority list is it?
I think they personally value it highly. That's the sense I get. Now, I wasn't in the meeting. Well, I met with John before, but I wasn't in the meeting with Tom. I was away at the time. But I know Tom as well, and I think they value it, absolutely. But sure, how could you not value it? It is the bedrock. But I certainly think that there's other areas within the GAA that don't see it that way at all, because they see that you've got the cash cow here. And if we keep the cash cow going, and if we, kind of fire it up every now and again, as in, let's change the structure of it, let's do a Super 8, let's do this, let's do that, whatever we need. Yes, the club is there, but at the same time, is the club really, one of our main issues about, we were thinking, well, how do you turn the heat up on this? But imagine trying to get, a militant situation within the clubs. You could never organise something because it's so disparate, and it's so, one club would do it, one other club wouldn't do it, maybe half the members would do it. But if the GPA decided, which they have done before, that they want to do something with the inter-county fellas, it's done. Yeah. They decide to pull up their socks or pull down their socks or go out late for, remember they did it a couple of years ago and won the league matches, they all left late out of the dressing room. That was just a sign of strength, and a show of strength and a show of solidarity. So, there has to come a point, and I think it honestly genuinely is coming on. The amount of stuff we see coming through. We did the recent survey. We had an unbelievable amount of respondents who came back and actually took their time, not only to answer the survey, but then write in notes and actually come back. We sent it out to all the media and say, this is what I'd like to see, or whatever that comment was. But man, there was some amount of anger in that and some amount of frustration. And that's
any specific thing that kind of kept coming up in those notes?
Just the regularity. And the fixture, just being able to sit down and to be able to say with some level of certainty, with a high level of certainty, that I know when I'm out and I know when I'm not out. And that's all people want. Yeah. I don't think that's much. That's not much of an ask.
Well, you're blue in the face from saying it. Like, it is a top-down approach that's required to actually give a uniform regularity to each county, because it's going to need to be a national thing. Just on that point, here's Noel McGrath on the lack of fun in the GAA. He was speaking to Maura Trass and Icelandic this week.
One thing that strikes me is, obviously with the advent of social media, you see rugby players, football players nearly retweeting or putting things up on Instagram of them having fun, being out and about, and their supporters and their fans are retweeting it saying, fair play to them, aren't they having great fun? But if you were to put the same video up I think the reaction might be different.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, and I think it's just probably a culture in the GAA that probably needs to change a small bit and just let players have a bit more freedom in what they do and enjoy what they do, because to be honest, every player that's playing is putting in serious effort in their training, in their diet, in what they do, and they're planning around maybe some with families and their work and all that. So like, I think it's just about enjoying it and trying to enjoy it a bit more outside of your training and away from things. And as you said, and just people in other sports who seem to enjoy it a lot more, or maybe do a lot more things outside of it, and that's nearly more acceptable. So I think it's just something that has to be maybe a cultural change, and maybe players will just have to, I suppose, go with it and see if people will respond in a positive way to it.
Noel McGrath there speaking to Maura Trassa this week. It's an interesting point, isn't it?
That, like, I mean, even that talk is very dangerous, I think. You know, and I think more and more we've seen that maybe players are getting a bit more brave over the last few years to say that, because probably people would not have admitted it as much, or maybe just with the last number of years, and with definitely a sea change with the increase in intensity and training and everything else, and this whole idea of you're nearly cocooned as an inter-county player. That, you know, it's kind of come to a breaking point, and the thing about it is as that level of as I say, people say the professionalism, but as that kind of level of intensity and being a cocoon and everything else as an inter-county, as that increases, it actually drip feeds down into the clubs. So the really top senior clubs will be, you know, they pick everything from the inter-county setups, be it training methods, whatever it is, and they will then decide, well, actually, this is the way to go. So you can see it, I even see it, you can see it in club football over the last kind of 10 years, how not drinking bans, but everything is kind of, you know, you're meant to be more professional in your manner, and and the fun has been eked away and eked away and eked away. I think probably the sensible people, and there's maybe some sensible coaches or sensible clubs, have actually decided, no, we need to actually bring that back in. We need to bring it back in a big way. You know, we need to be able to go and enjoy. It's not necessarily drinking and alcohol, but it's actually just going and enjoying your time with your teammates, having a barbecue, having whatever it is after training. You know, just getting a bit of social aspect to it again. Because ultimately, that's the best things I remember from club football. You know, the kind of the social camaraderie that you had with teammates and different stuff like that, and meeting people and enjoying it. You know, doing your stuff on the field and training hard, but also having the other side of it.
Yeah, definitely.